Hi, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chat today for May 16th, 2024. Today, I'm going to take my take. We're going to do my take on value-based billing or value-based pricing, getting beyond the per diem. A lot of great presentations have been out there. Gomani, I think, did it for the chats. She definitely did it as a presentation for American Evaluation Association in New Orleans. I've seen this conversation many times. There's a lot of books out there about this. I don't have any books ready for you. There's one in here. I'll share. There's a citation that I suggest you read to think about this sort of thing. But effectively, this is the idea of pricing our services, not so much on what it costs us to do our work, but what the value is based upon the receiver of our services. So I do want to start by saying, in all things we do, if I can get the slide to move, there we go. In all things we do, we should be thinking about our niche. And I've talked about niche before, or you guys say niche. Okay, I say niche. I've looked it up. You can say it either way. You say niche, I say niche. Tomatoes, tomatoes. Let's call it a day. Niche. All things you do, you should be thinking about who you're trying to serve. Why are you in existence? Okay, I'm going to go into a lot of things, and I don't want anybody getting too far off into the crazy boundaries of I should be making money, and the money becomes before why you're around to do these things. Money is certainly a piece of it. So quickly around niche, you're doing things that you love to do because you wake up in the morning thinking about it and you're excited about it. You love this thing, whatever this thing is. If it's you can't wait to get into your quantitative analysis and you want to spend all day in SPSS, fantastic. Something that you're good at, right? Something that people say, wow, I love Matt because he's really good at this thing, right? Where there's money or there's the value proposition. I don't do educational evaluation around civics because it's pretty hard to find those projects. We do a lot in STEM. I like both. If I focus all of my practice after history, educational evaluation, I would be hard pressed to find a lot of work. STEM program evaluation in the K-12 and the post-secondary world has a huge amount of interest, and along with that comes funding opportunities. So I can get paid for that. And this is based upon a Jim Collins perspective, and I talk about those three things, but I add in the Ikigai, which is a Okinawan Japanese idea of what the world needs. And so because we are oftentimes working within the social sector, we should be thinking about that fourth circle on top of it. And when you're focusing on all four of these things at the same time, you're in your sweet spot of what you can do, where you're going to be successful. And frankly, if you keep focusing on that, you should be successful in all things. So this is just a backstory. And remember your niche at all times. So per diem, when we're talking about per diem, before we get beyond the per diem, let's talk about what that is. That's your hourly or your daily rate. We did a presentation in March on how to calculate your hourly or your daily rate. So look that up. And if you remind me when I stop recording and we're in the chat function, I'll send you that presentation if you want to see it, along with the accompanying documents that help you calculate that. There's a little spreadsheet and things like that. But the problem with the per diem is you have a limited number of hours you can work. So the way you calculate that per diem, which is that whole topic that I covered, you're thinking about all your costs and you're thinking about all your time and you're doing the calculation between those. So a lot of people will come up with a calculation between $100 and $300 an hour for whatever reason. That might be I think the median is actually 150 when we did the survey. Not saying you should calculate, you shouldn't be charging at $150 an hour because I said that. I'm just saying that was the median based upon a survey that the TIG did. But if you work 1,000 hours in a year and you get paid $150 an hour, your high end, the highest end you can get to is 150,000, right? So if you work 2,000, I think that would be fully billable for pretty much all year long with no vacations and no time on administration or marketing or spending time with me. You would be at 300,000. That'd be fantastic. But anyhow, problem is there's only so high you can go. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many hours in the year that you can work. Why do you want to get beyond this per diem? Well, frankly, we get better at our jobs. I mean, faster at our jobs. Oh, let's see this. Yeah, there it is. I thought this popped up line by line. Anyway, we get faster at our jobs. So this, in year one, if it takes you 5 hours to do a project, you get paid at $150 an hour, that's $750. Next year, if you do it in 1 hour, you get paid $150. Well, that's not exactly fair because the client's getting the same thing, right? Even with hourly rate increases, we may be making less per hour. So even if you bumped your hourly rate up to $200 an hour, you're still losing out on $550 in that previous scenario. But honestly, our clients value our industry expertise because, well, we frequently know their industry better than they do if we've been doing this for a while. As an example, we work with 3 different universities who all have NOIS, National Science Foundation NOIS projects. We've had NOIS projects with previous institutions, and we have on our staff a previous NOIS principal investigator. So she understands it. She serves on a regional board for NOIS. She goes to the annual meetings. I've been involved with this. So when we go into a new client, we start talking to them about how to successfully implement a NOIS project. We're not just saying we know this stuff. We know this stuff because I've been doing it for more than 10 years. And the staff member on at Goshen who's been doing this, she's been doing it for nearly as long, but that was her job. Like this, she was the principal investigator. So there's a lot of value that we bring to our clients. And frankly, even when our clients don't realize it, we frequently know more about how to run their projects than they do, which is that case in point. And we're often looking ahead. We can see what they're doing, not necessarily just today, but what they're doing in terms of where they're going to finish their projects, because we're putting together logic models. And we're thinking about these things with regards to how they're going to find that next project. So we have this value idea where perhaps somebody has a $100,000 project and they give us $10,000 to 10% to help them out to do their program evaluation. If we're doing our jobs right, we're not just providing a program evaluation back to them. We're helping them think through and create, and just through the program evaluation process, think through how they're successful with their projects. Oftentimes they are, and how they're thinking about making that $100,000 project a $1 million project or a several $1 million project. That's a huge value proposition for the client. So maybe perhaps we should be charging more for our services. Just argument. That's going to be part of the conversation. A lot of people will chime in on that. Okay, so I want to get into this Alan Weiss idea. I love this idea. I've seen this a couple times. I know Corey Newhouse used this I think in one of her articles. I know she's referenced this before. I think about it a lot. He talks about the difference between a contractor and an entrepreneur. So the contractor is somebody who provides what a client wants or what they think they want, right? We often will bid on contracts through a RFP process. They'll put out this RFP. We want X, Y, and Z. We can do that for this amount of dollars. They look at this process of purchasing and then they choose the best contractor, oftentimes the lowest price, right? Well, that's kind of the road to the bottom in my mind. Frankly, we want to be, from Alan Weiss's perspective, an entrepreneur. We want to, come on now. We want to provide what the client needs because we have the better perspective for who they are, what they're doing, the industry that they're operating in, because we're experienced at what we do. We are consultants. I will say, I don't like the word entrepreneur, I like the word consultant better, even though we'll give credit to Alan Weiss for the entrepreneur, but consultant for us is the better idea because we are consulting with our clients with the idea of helping them be better at what they do, not just do the job that they want us to do. So if we switch these things around and we move them around, we think about the contractor and the consultant. And frankly, the distance between these two is the value distance. And that's his term, which fits perfectly into the theme of today of the word value. And when I say value, this is literal value. This is literally dollars, because the dollars, we're helping our clients go from $100,000 to $1 million projects in pursuit of their own mission. That's valuable to them, hugely valuable to them. In this case, $900,000 valuable, right? I don't think we should get 900,000. Well, maybe, I don't think so. But the point is by doing that, they they certainly want to get it for the lowest price because that's their job to try and keep the prices low. But frankly, we have a value proposition for them that's pretty important and impressive. So let's just talk about what an investment is. That's effectively what they're doing. When they pay us to do a thing and they know that there's going to be a value associated with that more than just doing the contract, there's an investment. So we are our client's investment because we help them to be better at what they do, right? We help them pursue their missions. Oftentimes they're mission-focused institutions, right? We're helping them pursue that mission in a better fashion. Typical investment is one where, like for instance, in a stock, if you buy a stock and you buy 10 shares of a stock at $100 a share and it's worth $1,000 and it goes up to $200 a share, it's now worth $2,000. So the value proposition for us is $1,000. Our investment is this kind of a thing where perhaps we're doing a grant writing project and they give us $15,000 for a grant writing project and they win $1 million grant. That's the value. The value proposition is the difference between $1 million and 15,000. Should it be higher? I don't know. In fact, this is the art of the whole conversation. And frankly, this is probably where I want the chat to go because I don't personally know how to go about these things. But I found myself in it, and this is part of the purpose of putting out this presentation. We do it a lot, but I'm not sure I always have a clear and concise idea about how I go about my value. My first introduction to this value-based idea was, from my dad, who was an oil and gas accountant. And I just looked this up probably 5 minutes before the presentation started today. The oil and gas industry spent 1.3 trillion with a T in a year. That's a lot of money. So there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of money to be, they need to get their act together. So frankly, my father, who found himself living in Houston for various reasons, in accounting, found himself into the oil and gas industry. He worked for this little company called Enron once upon a time. He passed away a couple of years ago. And he also worked for a company called Arthur Andersen, which both those companies went under. That's a whole other conversation for another day. It's an interesting one. But after that was all over in 2002, he started his own consulting practice and he was charging $250 an hour in 2002. And I was like, holy cow, Dad, how can you get that kind of money? And frankly, he didn't have any problems. In fact, he probably should have been charging $500 an hour because he was able to he would go into an, I don't really know what he did. I still to this day don't really understand it. But he would go into to an oil pipeline and he'd sit down and understand how everything was being accounted for. Literally, where's the oil? And he would help them understand it to a better fashion. And he would give them millions and millions of dollars back on their books. And they loved him for it. And they couldn't buy enough of his time. So he was working constantly. So after 5 years of work, he retired to Mexico. And so he did 5 years of work and made enough money, bought a house. He and his wife retired to Mexico. That was my first exposure to this whole idea of presenting yourself based upon the value to others. Again, Dad probably should have been charging more per hour. He seemed happy with it. He retired. He had a house. He had a great last 15 years of his life. It was all good. Here's another example. And this is the most prominent example that happens within my firm and probably something you should be thinking about if you're not doing, and a lot of your peers are doing this. It's the whole idea of the flat fee contract. So in this situation, let's say you go in with a client and you win a 5-year project for $150,000. So that's $30,000 per year. And you bid this out at 200 hours per year, right? So you're going to work on all the client meetings and all the data collection and surveys, and you're going to write up reports and you're going to present the reports, and there'll be interactive data dashboards, all the fancy stuff that we do as program evaluators. Meeting after it all to communicate the results and present ways that they can improve upon what they do. You're helping them think about what's going to happen next. That takes 200 hours a year. We think, maybe, perhaps, probably. So that's $30,000 a year. In this scenario, you're gonna invoice $7,500 per quarter. So that's January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. I like that idea because it gives me revenue stability for the year. I know I'm gonna get $30,000. It's spread out over a period of time. That makes sense to the client. They know that if we ever just kind of start ghosting them, we go AWOL, then they can stop paying us and they're not out that much. As far as I'm aware, you really don't end up with many problems on the part of like major public organizations like universities or government organizations from the state or anything like that. They seem okay with this. And frankly, it saves them the time of thinking about your hours and wondering what you're doing, because frankly, they don't want to know the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. They just want to see kind of like the finished products, and they want to know that you're involved and engaged. So we've got these quarterly invoices of $7,500. In year one, you end up overworking the project by 20 hours. In year two, you end up working about what you expected. Year three is kind of a quiet year, 150 hours. Year four picked up, the PI turned over, and we've got a new PI, got to bring them up, so there's an extra 10 hours. But in year five, you ended up working only 170 because you got this on cruise control at this point. The net result is 950 hours. If you're doing your math at 200 hours per year for 5 years, it should be 1,000 hours. So your value in this was 50 hours, which equates to $7,500. So this is typically where we start to stick our toe into the value-based billing idea. And I highly suggest you do this because everybody basically agrees that this makes sense. This works for a lot of us, at least within these multiple year contracts. The clients, they agree that the value is there because effectively you're saying to them, you're getting $30,000 of value per year. And the way I equate that is to 200 hours. Now, if you find yourself able to do this in 100 hours a year and you're more than exceeding their expectations, more power to you. Frankly, they probably don't care, and they're not going to ask for money back. As long as you're meeting or exceeding their expectations, which is always the goal, you're making money off that. Here's an example that came to us. Thank you, Juliana Rosa, who's here today. We had she suggested a potential client to us. It's not a done deal, so I'm probably jinxing myself by even bringing this conversation up today. But in this situation, we had a defense contractor come to us who works in the STEM education world, and they were thanks, Juliana. They have this project that they are currently doing, and they have a current evaluator. We don't know who they are. And that individual is doing some pretty basic stuff compared to what we do. So they put out this RFP and they said, we'd like you to bid on this. And to us, it was something that was worth about $5,000 a year. And I don't want to do $5,000 a year projects anymore. It's just too much work because frankly, we always overwork them and we can do a lot more. So our solution, our consultant solution, the contract solution was to put something together that was worth about $5,000, $5,000 to $10,000 per year. I think we could have bid it out for 5. We could have probably said it was 10,000, which is probably what the other person's charging. And that we could have made money off that, I suppose. But frankly, I don't want to do that kind of work anymore. So we put out the consultant solution, which is interactive data dashboards, where they were looking at static data dashboards. We're going to do it in Power BI, where they were receiving stuff in like PDF. The survey process was pretty simple. Look at this. I even left a comma after Power BI because I hadn't finished my thought. Told you I was just working on this presentation. But the truth is the value for us is something we could have bid it out for what they wanted at $5,000. But frankly, we took the consultant solution and we decided to bid it out at $25,000. I think that's where we ended up. Honestly, I don't know. But that's about where we were talking about it. We basically expanded the project. We're still actually billing this out at the same hourly rate. So I'm not pushing, but why would I want to do a $5,000 project when I can do a $25,000 project? It fills up, it's going to be more work, but it's a better opportunity. And frankly, I think they should go for it. We're still waiting to hear. So that's one example. Now I love this other story. This other story comes from Mark Manson. Anybody know who this is? What this is? I know Kristen Covert knows what this is. Anybody want to put it in the chat? Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's in Chicago. It's known, yeah, it looks like a horse. It's art, correct, Jason? It's a Picasso. It's known as the Chicago Picasso. And it's a beautiful piece of work. And it's an example that I like to reference a lot of times because I think about this from whenever you're triangulating data, and the whole idea is that you look at data from different perspectives. You're looking at it quantitatively and qualitatively and things like that, and you see the bigger picture. Well, if you walk around this piece of art in the Daily Plaza in Chicago, you'll see different things. From straight on, it looks kind of like a horse, but from the back side, it looks like a woman's head, or a profile of a woman's head. It's kind of interesting. It's actually where I proposed to my wife. So anyway, that's a whole nother story. I use this as a reference because Mark Manson, in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F Word, it's the actual name of the book, which is great. And it's really about Buddhist philosophy, if you can believe it. He talks about fudge, right? Correct, fudge. He talks about Pablo Picasso. Imagine the situation where Pablo Picasso is sitting in a cafeteria, and he's just scribbling away. He's just doing random artwork on this thing, random, just not even thinking carefully about what he's doing. He's an older man at this point, probably, was it 1950s, 1960s when he passed away. So he's near the end of his career, near the end of his life. And he crumples up this piece of paper and he sets it aside, and he's getting ready to like toss it in the trash can, which right there. But imagine across this cafe, there's another woman. She goes, wait, because she knew who he was. She saw him scribbling away. I want that. And this little piece of trash to him. I want that. I will pay you for that. And he goes, well, sure, ma'am. I'd be happy to sell this to you. That'll cost $20,000. And she went, what? $20,000? But it only took you a couple minutes to draw. His response was, no, ma'am. It took me 80 years to draw this. And the point in all of that is we are experienced. Pablo Picasso in that situation was extremely experienced and extremely a gifted artist who was well acclaimed. And so it was worth $20,000. And frankly, she should have probably given him $20,000 because I'm sure it's worth more now. But we are our own version of Pablo Picasso because of our experiences. And so we are worth a lot to our clients, to certain people. And also the other thing to take away from this is wait till Pablo Picasso throws it away and walks away and then go dig through the trash and then you get it for free. But anyway, that's the story on that. All right, so I'm gonna round things out as I often do with 5.5 ideas about value. So first one is maybe you should raise your rates. Maybe you should be like Dad and charge $250 an hour if people are willing to pay it, because frankly, if you do the rate calculation, the per diem calculation, the big number in there is what should you be paid annually, right? What's your annual salary? So maybe you should give yourself a raise, which means your rates go up. And if people pay it, then great. I highly suggest, if you're not doing it already, do a flat fee contract. It gives you focus. So you bill out your time, you estimate your time, and then you try and beat that time calculation per year. At a certain point, don't take the $5,000 projects anymore. You don't need them. And maybe we should all be taking $100,000 projects. I don't know. And whatever the number is for you, probably should start thinking, I only want to, because I think I've heard this story, Stephanie Evergreen, giving her reference for this, says something like you shouldn't have more than 5 or 6 projects. I'd like to get there. We're usually a lot higher than that because there's just too much mental energy placed on each project. So if you have a $35,000 projects, that's a lot of mental energy. Why not have fewer at a higher amount? So if you have enough work, as Bob Thornburg was telling us before I started the recording, he's full. What I would suggest to people like Bob is when the next person comes along and wants to give you a project, if it's below a certain threshold, don't take it because you're just going to cause yourself more angst and you're going to be putting too much energy into a small project. Set that threshold higher. to the degree you can, identify your value in terms of your client's investment potential. And this is where the conversation goes. How do you do that? I don't know. I honestly don't know how you do that. Should I be charging $100,000 for a project where we have 20,000, where I've normally been bidding it out at 20, because they're willing to pay it and it's worth it to them. You got to be careful with how you do that because of, regulations and requirements from the particularly federal funding requirements. So be careful around that, but depending on who you're working with, that may be $100,000 would be a wonderful investment for them because they can get quite a bit more out of that. I do this a lot. I seek out investments, opportunities for my clients. So I bring it to them. And oftentimes when you bring it to them, you get to set your price. Now, maybe it's just the hourly rate like we're talking about in the flat fee contract. But if you're ahead of the game on the opportunities coming down the pipe, whatever it is, when the opportunities are coming out, if you're ahead of the game on those things, you get to share them with the clients. And you've well thought through what your value proposition is. And so you get to start the conversation with your value proposition versus them coming to you, hey, I have this project, I have $10,000, and you gotta start behind the 8 ball, right? You're behind when they bring it to you. When you can bring the opportunity to them and you see it ahead of time and you're forecasting it, that's great. And the 5.5 is to seek out those new clients who can definitely find people who should be working on the projects that are out there. I've done this where I literally called people up and sent letters and emailed people who I knew would be able to win a project because the project was perfect for them. I knew their demographics and everything about them, and all they really need to do is put a little bit of energy into it. And we have 2 current clients who would never have gotten projects, and actually 4 different clients who never would have gotten projects if I hadn't reached out to them. And it's been wonderful. And they're wonderful. Well, 3 of them are wonderful clients. We won't go into the one that's not so great, but you got to have some. Anyway, with that, I'm going to stop the recording, and everybody out there in YouTube land, I'll see you later. Everybody here live, stick around. And I want to hear your thoughts on this because frankly, I don't have my thoughts completely wrapped around, particularly around how you identify your value. Where do you set that price point? All right.